So today I want to talk about weekly team meetings, right? So 5 items to cover in every weekly team meeting to make them super effective. Because here's the thing, teams get lost without clear communication and collaboration. And a reoccurring team meeting is the perfect way to do both. But most people get this wrong. Most leaders get this wrong. Wasting everyone's time in most instances and burning a whole bunch of time in the process. You don't want that, it makes your business inefficient. So if your meetings feel like they could have been an email, you're doing it wrong. So here are my top 5 items that you should nail in every meeting you have with your management team. Hi, Lawrence here. I've generated over 100 million across all of my companies, failed a lot, probably more than you and everybody else, and made more mistakes than most. So what I share comes from real experience across all of my companies, startup and existing. No just the facts. Okay, let's get into it. Number 1, updated goal status. So the first item is simple. When the meeting starts, everyone should know how you're doing and where things are at. So if it's chaired by the CEO or the COO or the managers are diving in, they need to start with a bit of a status update. So you need a company dashboard or someone needs to champion the narrative of a strategy document throughout the entire meeting. This is normally the CEO, you can make it the COO or anyone who's chairing the meeting, so you can move that around on a weekly basis to give everyone exposure to that type of leadership, right? So I would focus on top 3 goals. And measurable outcomes and company metrics must be part of that. And the key is this, the status is updated weekly before the meeting. So make sure that your sales numbers are up to date, that your operations numbers are up to date and on point, and that your marketing metrics are up to date so they can be delivered inside the meeting. I deliver my management meetings on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. every single week. And that allows one day, Monday, right, to allow all managers to get all the data up to date and get it into their report so they can bring that to the meeting, right? So I would rank progression with the system as well. So you and everyone needs to know how things are progressing. And the best thing I find works for everyone they can understand is a simple percentage. So for me, on pace is 75+%, slightly off pace is between 50 to 75%, and off pace is below 50%. I like to focus on the below 50% items first. Why is it below 50%? If it's quarterly strat and you're halfway through, that may be okay, but if you're 2 months into a 3-month strategy and you're below 50%, there's a blocker. So you need to sort of figure out and unpack that. That's what these meetings are for, right? So doing this removes confusion, it removes all the emotions, and it stops the meeting turning into opinion wars where everyone's got something to say about something. So never forget this. The CEO must keep the conversation on point, or whoever is chairing the meeting. So it must be chaired. Someone has to take responsibility for the communication inside the meeting, inside the hub, right? So this is about company strategy, not micro issues the team faces on a day-to-day basis. That is the manager's problem and a divisional problem. This is not the company problem. These meetings are about strategy. They're not about little micro elements, okay? So no one cares that the coffee machine's broken, people, you know, or the dishwasher or any other random kitchen appliance. If the goal status is unclear, the meeting becomes storytelling, and storytelling is great for the campfire, but not for executional business. You start the meeting with a dashboard or a statement of the strategy document. Basically, where things are at, so give everyone a bit of an update, and any changes and setting the narrative for the meeting. Now, the changes will be during the month you've figured out that you might want to add some stuff to the strategy and decrease other items, swap things out, or you may be putting notes in there to support the existing strategy. You kind of have to figure that out. But please keep it simple. Remember, the strategy is 3 things per manager for the quarter. What is going to move the needle the most? So a quick recap. So start with a dashboard or a document, the top 3 goals, the outcomes and the key metrics, and update weekly so the meeting starts with reality, not guesswork. All right, number 2, team progress. So you review team progress and you do so carefully. So pivot and move around the table so each manager gets their opportunity to lay out their previous week and their week to come inside the quarterly strategy. So everyone has a voice, right? I always start with the sales manager. And I do that because we go from the metrics, the sales metrics down, right? So that's what I do. You don't have to do that, but every manager needs to get an opportunity to lay their game out. So this is where the leader gives a clear snapshot of how the team's doing. It's always good to know that. Not a full report, but more of a signal. That's what you're looking for. So then you do, say, 2 to 3 important things. What are the most important things that that manager is dealing with that have changed status since the last week, improved or worsened? So a couple of weeks ago, something was on 50%. It's still on 50%. Like, that's a red flag, right? There's a red light there. You need to go deep on that. So those are the types of things you're trying to identify. You also want to identify the big issue areas where you want to solve those problems as a group, right? Now, there's 1 or 2 ways to do this. You can do it in the meeting, short, sharp, and fast, to the point, or do it later in a meeting off the table in a separate get-together, right? Because sometimes it requires a lot of discussion to solve a problem, and you don't want to block up this meeting with things that are not relevant to other people or other divisions, right? So that matters because it stops the meeting jumping around and losing its focus, which is really, really easy to do, by the way. Sometimes you can let it ride, but you do need to have discipline and pull everyone back into the agenda, right? So this meeting is essentially not a deep problem-solving session. It can be, but my advice is to only do that sometimes. I wouldn't apply frequency to that strategy. So that'll come later. This is more of a scan, and it's more of a shortlist, right? So you want to get these things on the table and then figure out how you deal with them, whether you collaborate or you don't. Or you have to get a third party, or you got to take it to another meeting, or it's going to require 2 or 3 meetings to figure out what a solution or result is, right? So this is about identification regarding what needs attention, so keep it laser sharp. If I was to give you an example, it could be a manager states, here's what moved forward this week. 2 items went from green to red, right? So going really, really well to being blocked. And 1 moved from yellow to green, right? So that's what you're trying to identify. So then they name the 2 biggest issues, and you can figure out how to solve the problem. Simple and effective. That's essentially all you're trying to do. I hope that makes sense. So a quick recap. The team progress is the weekly scan. It's not a deep dive unless you need it to be. You want to know what changed. So what's yellow, what's red, what's green, what's urgent, and what needs solving. And more importantly, what needs solving now or what needs solving later. And no deep dives if you can help it. Okay, number 3, functional progress. Now you go 1 layer deeper, right? So the question is, what functions are holding up the team goal? That team goal is attached to the strategy. Okay, so this is where key leaders call out blockers and challenges in their area. This is deeper than what I just spoke about in item 2. So we're talking break it down into sales, marketing, operations, finance. Normally you would do that. Delivery and support, right? Connected to the client or the customer. So the key focus here is leaders should focus on their own goals that have gone yellow or red. Not everything, just yellow or red. Just what is impacting their progression to move forward, right? So this step helps identify the root cause of the broader team falling behind. The Monday, because we have our meetings on a Tuesday, they know automatically to reset in what's blocking me, what are my challenges, is this a team issue, is this a personnel issue, is this a third party issue, is this a technology issue? They get to resolve that. Well, no, sorry, they don't get to resolve it. They get to write it down and think about it on a Monday and bring that to the table on Tuesday morning. The goal is to keep it really, really simple and keep it really, really vertical. You don't want to over narrate those types of situations because it turns into a really, really big discussion. Now, that said, no harm, no foul, that will happen. We constantly do that. But I'm there to kind of pull it back and say, hey, can you take that off the table? Let's make a note. We have an AI record the meeting, and then I move it to the next manager. We normally go about an hour and a half. So they have room to move because you don't want to make it feel like they're not getting the point, the narrative, or the communication across to be able to leverage assistance and collaboration, right? I hope that makes sense. So when you do that, it sort of sets you up for the next step. So problem solving. and future collaboration, like I said, with other managers and other divisions. Managers can solve problems on their own if they have the experience, exposure, and expertise, right? But if they don't, and it's a problem they haven't encountered before, collaboration is highly recommended. You have to be careful about collaboration though, because it can go down a bit of a rabbit hole or a foxhole. I don't know. Do foxes live in holes? I don't really know. I don't know why I said that. That's weird. Once you know what function is being blocked and what's blocking it, you can stop the guesswork and you can start fixing it. So an example may be sales leader says lead volume is fine, but the pickup rate or the appointment set rate has dropped off. And it's pushing revenue off pace for the month, right? It could be the operations leader says onboarding is bottlenecked, we're falling behind, it's taking too long to get through things. So now you can sort of see the chain of events if you break it down in those categories, and then you can choose what to solve, what the blockers are, and how to deploy and execute. Make sense? Okay, so a quick recap is functional progress equals finding the root cause so you can identify and tackle it. Each leader calls out what blockers they're facing. Simple. And this sets up real problem solving and look for future collaboration with your teammates. I was going to say something else besides teammates. All right, number 4. You know that because I did that. Smart guys. Okay, so this is the heart of the meeting, right? So what I'm talking about is removing all of your top blockers. Elimination. Kill those blockers. So the question is, how do we get our top 3 blocked items back to green? So they've gone red all of a sudden, right? You've identified that in some of the previous discussions. So your team lead selects the top 3 blocked goals to solve and then collaborates with the team to do it before they come to the meeting. Here's the thing, is they need to bring a solution. They need to bring a solution. Now, it's okay if that solution is not the right solution, but what it does, it kicks off the communication and collaboration process. And it should be chaired by the CEO or the CIO or whoever's chairing the meeting for that particular day, because it's got to be capped and controlled, right? Super critical to get that right. Here's the rule. Focus on items that have been red or yellow for over 2 weeks, not 1, right? Why? Because 1 week off pace is okay because it happens all the time, right? But 2 weeks in a month, it's 50% of the duration, right, of the time horizon. If you're 1.5 months into a quarter and it's gone red, you're 50% into the time horizon. So you've got to be very, very cautious about that. But a week off track's sort of okay because you don't want to create panic and high levels of just reaction, because you'll find sometimes when you leave stuff alone, it works itself out. So just remember that. So look, if there's a pattern of 2 weeks, you need to sort of get on top of that. And patterns are where businesses bleed time and money. So you need to facilitate a solution, a session, and figure out how you will get there collaboratively, making sure that the manager is involved, right? So move that around the group if you need to. If it becomes too complex, push it out, pivot, and move it to another meeting. If good ideas are present though, run it in the same meeting and have a path forward with a deadline. Because someone can come up with a concept and an idea to unblock something really, really fast. But if it's not firing, pivot outside the stand-up, the manager's meeting. I always recommend that. Because what will happen is everyone will have an opinion of what they think, but there's no clarity, no research, and no data wrapped around that, right? So you're not making informed decisions here. You're making dangerous ones. So be very careful about that. So now, if there are some key blockers, that should take up most of your meeting time if you can solve those problems. If not, you've got to de-escalate them and push them outside of the existing manager's meeting. For us on a Tuesday morning, remember, at 9 a.m. Because if you don't solve anything, the meeting just becomes an update. Just like report out, right? You don't want that. It's a waste of time. And if you want updates only, you could record a video and just simply let everyone get back to work. Like, really. But a solution would mean, so define the blocker clearly, identify the root cause, choose a fixer or choose a solution, assign ownership to somebody. You have to set a due date. This is not random, man. Don't do that. Have a date and confirm how you will measure the improvement next week. And it doesn't need to be 100%, by the way, people. Depending on what the solution is, it could take 4 weeks to fix. Okay, so that means in 4 weeks we'll be at 100%, it'll be done, it'll be fixed. So next week we're expecting you to be 25% solution orientated as you commence that problem, fixing that problem or that blocker, right? Make sense? Like get quarter of it done by next week, please. So an example could be the goal's being read for say 3 weeks, right? The team agrees the blocker's not effort. So the team's working hard, they're getting stuff done. However, they've identified it's a missing handover step between 2 functions, right? Awesome, great, take that to the meeting. In the meeting, you decide the new handover rule, assign ownership and implementation, who will implement that strategy, set a due date, and agree on the metric that it must be improved by in which week. Fast and furious, right? That's how you do it. Henry, do they have a Prius in Fast and Furious? I don't think they have a Prius in Fast and Furious. Yeah, that's a shame. Imagine seeing The Rock in a Prius. Right?
Let's go and chase unicorns!
Okay, so this is where most meetings collapse. It's called assigning next actions, accountability, right? So the question is, what actions came out of the meeting? What actions came out of the meeting? You have to write down the required next actions with clear owners. These actions take place between meetings, by the way, in the week to come, for example. Not someday, so you have to hold everybody accountable. And there's no excuses for not having that done, because if it's agreed upon in the meeting where you say, can you get this done by then? I can get it to 20%, great. 20% means what? It means this, great, let's write that down. We'll check in on the next manager's meeting. And they haven't done that, you have an issue. So each owner is expected to complete their action item, and you track the status to ensure everyone is on track and the goal status improves and is moving towards the result. So if you leave the meeting without ownership, without actions, you did not have a meeting. You basically had a group chat with snacks and coffee. Like, you can't do that. Make the actions visible. Owner-orientated, action-orientated, and have a due date. Then review them in the next meeting and don't miss it. The problem with people in meetings is they have meetings, they write things down, and they get to the next meeting and no one reviews what they were supposed to do in the previous meeting. All the time that happens. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. That's the definition of craziness, is I think that. So an example could be, at the end of the meeting, you list 5 actions, right? Each one has an owner, it has a date, it has a clear outcome. Next week, you start by checking whether those actions were done, and you do it first up before anything else. And what happens when you do that? Everyone gets to expect it. Then you create a callus around it. So every week, everyone's going to ask about whether I got that stuff done, I better get it done. So it lifts productivity and efficiency. So, because you want to know whether the goal has moved closer to green, or is it still stuck in amber, or is it still stuck on red, right? Now, if no one did anything, you have to hold them accountable. Like, personal accountability is super critical. Can you do that publicly? Yes, you can. Can you take it off the grid? Yes, you can. Depending on the severity of it, right? So just think about that. So weekly meetings are supposed to create alignment and momentum, okay? And they are important. It's just about structuring them out to make them efficient, because important doesn't work, efficiency does. But if they're unstructured, what they'll do is they will drain energy from your team and stall execution, right? Because what happens when one person's talking and you have 5 people in that meeting? Think about how much you're paying them. It becomes inefficient when there's nothing that they can contribute, right? Like, we do have a policy, if this meeting doesn't apply to you, you can leave. But that's not this meeting. That policy doesn't apply to a management meeting. This is about collaboration, getting everyone involved, and everyone know what's happening in everyone else's divisions, because you want Matt Damon goes, hey, I'm doing this, and then Ben Affleck, who's sitting over there, goes, hey, I'm doing this, and I think we could collaborate on that because it'll make us more efficient, right? Like, those guys don't work here, by the way, but you know what I mean. So it's not like fake news, right? It's not like just lots of talking and nothing real. You need to make it real. The fix is about not having super long meetings. You're better off having shorter meetings at higher levels of quality, right? And that's how you get there. So I always say a clear dashboard or a document, so you've got a foundation. You want to use those meetings as a scan for identification. You need to find blockers and functions to overcome them. This is about real problem solving, and it's about tracking people's actions so you can hold them accountable. If you do this consistently, your meetings stop being a habit and they become a tool. You need them to be a tool. They need to be executable. So all of a sudden, everything goes up and to the right when you do that. Trust me, I've done it and it works. It just takes a little bit of time, so you need to have some patience. Okay, thanks for listening. Sincerely appreciate it. Look, if you like this app and you found value in it, we'd really appreciate it. A like and a subscribe. We're trying to get to 1 million subscribers on YouTube this year, and your help would be greatly appreciated. Or perhaps share it with someone that you think could benefit from the content. We do this for free and we fund it ourselves, so that support generally helps us. If you have a question, drop a comment and I'll get back to you. If you don't, I won't. That kind of makes sense. Again, thanks. I'll see you next time.